Star Planet TV to talk about a better world and how to make the world better. And
this is my show.
Those questions
Challenge.
ourselves. We got to challenge ourselves.
It's true. This is my show.
When men stand up, boys do what?
Sit down.
Sit down.
Now that's the key. This is my show.
Not the society. You as a solution. What you gonna do to promote peace?
This is my show.
Let me finish. But let me say something. See, you want to finish what I don't say it. Then you have to finish the question. But you won't let me finish the question. You don't want my answer.
This is my show.
A better world. As we reactivate this series again after being dormant for several years, I wanted to start this program off by introducing the new brotherhood, the international brotherhood that is building a better world. Because in 2007, a decision was made by the spirit in me that caused me to leave America 50 years ago and go back to Africa and begin the journey back to the Creator. We had no experience after being disconnected from the Holy Land for more than 2,000 years and had been held captive in America for over 400 years. 1619 is the official recording of bringing slaves into the United States, or America at that time. Those of us who were of African descent realized that our lofty position in Africa as free men and women had been reduced to that of chattel slavery and non-persons according to the government in America. And so for generations, we were trying to understand what happened to this great mighty people that we had been so high and now brought down so low. And so as a young man growing up in the city of Chicago, I tried to begin to read history and research what could possibly cause a people to fall. And it was late in the 60s that as a businessman operating in Chicago Heights, I was in one of the bars servicing the business, and some men, African-American men, were at a bar talking about Africa. I bought them a drink and joined the conversation. And after it was over, one of the men said, "It sounds as if you got deep insight into history." He said, "I want you to meet somebody out here." And that was the beginning of my journey to reconnect to the Creator. I met a man by the name of L.A. Bryant, introduced to that man by a man named Edgar Brinson. And after one session of listening and talking with him, I realized that the mystery of how we had fallen became clear to me. And the answer was in the Bible. And in those days, my generation had no desire to talk about the Bible. We felt that the church was part of the deception so that we would be misled continually, because my generation didn't believe that Jesus, a white man, was going to strengthen us against white men who were controlling our lives. So we rejected the religion of white Jesus, white angels, and began to look for the truth. And on that journey, sitting in my mother's bedroom or on my grandmother's shelf was the Bible that told the whole story. But I didn't pick it up because I thought it was a lie and a trick of white men, only to find out it was how the Creator had put the truth. Because in those days, people used to say, if you don't want a black person to read a book, don't put any pictures in it. And because the Bible didn't have pictures, and when it did have pictures, it was all white men and women saying that they were the people of God. But when I began to read the Bible, and I found out, starting in the book of Genesis, that the Holy Land of the Bible was in Northeast Africa, and that the Jesus of the Bible was hidden in Black Egypt, which is in Northeast Africa. Just from those two revelations of historical fact that I began to put the puzzle together. And so after 50 years of living outside of America and having children born free of the miseducation of the Negro that Carter G. Woodson spoke about in his seminal work at the beginning of the 20th century, I and many other men and women have been able to piece together an answer. And so on this maiden program today, I will be interviewing 4 men who we will be talking about various aspects of validating the truth that it is time for us to build a new world. So we'll return right back after this break. Welcome back. My first guest this morning is a pastor in the Chicago area and a great musician of positive spiritual music. And I wanted him to share how he arrived to the point of understanding what I discovered 50 years ago, so that you can see, listening to the audience, of your spiritual epiphanies that's getting ready to take place in you. It said, know ye the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So how did you get set free from the tradition of being just a Christian in America and accepting the Bible as the world has told you it existed, that the people of the Bible were white people, and that you were under a curse never to escape, and that you were a Gentile, and that you were being glad to be grafted in to white people's new world and new heaven and new earth? So tell me, what was your journey to finding out that that was not real, and that you were now on a journey to find out the absolute truth?
Real easy. Shalom to you too, Prince. My journey was sort of, I was born and raised and dropped off at the church.
Okay.
From birth. And pretty much I grew up right there in the church. I was what they would call a pew baby.
Okay.
And we our whole life was in the church, you know. Tuesday night prayer, Wednesday night Bible class,
Okay.
Friday night deliverance service,
Okay.
Thursday night choir rehearsal,
Okay.
and on and so forth. And so I just spent my whole life inside of the church. And I didn't know anything else different. My mom, she would have Saturday Bible classes for all the children in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of us, when we were that young, all of us very impressionable, we would pretty much believe everything the adult figure told us.
Of course.
Because you're impressionable, you're not thinking about anything else, but you don't believe that somebody would not tell you the truth about something.
Right. Especially about God.
Especially about God, And when I began to, grow up and begin to understand, I started preaching the same lie that was given to me.
Right.
And the lie is really effective when you start preaching it and you start understanding from that point of view and from that perspective. A lot of times you don't really know and understand all of the, you know, the hidden deception that's flying under it.
Right.
Your heart is pure, and you believe that you're sitting there listening to someone who's going to give you the truth.
Well, you a testimony that the pure in heart shall see God.
Yes, sir.
Because ultimately, because your heart was pure and your spirit was pure, God began to reveal to you. Tell me how it happened.
Well, it was it was kind of strange because I was a musician. I played for the churches all my life, playing the keyboard, playing the organ. And I started noticing the higher up I went, you know, in different organizations playing the organ, the more things I began to see behind the scenes that did not agree with my spirit. And I put my finger on it and said, man, that's not right. That's not right. But who am I to, you know, judge or buck against the system and that kind of thing. So I had a discerning heart and a discerning spirit. But at the same time, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I knew something was out of control, but I didn't really know what it was. So the first thing the Father, through the Holy Spirit, began to tell me was to stop playing for churches. Stop playing for churches. And
how long had you been playing in churches?
I've been playing churches ever since I was 12 years old. And the Father started telling me to stop playing for churches when I was about 22 years old.
Okay.
And when I first heard it, it sounded so strange, you know. It sounded so off to my ear, because I'm like, why would he give me a gift to play the organ? And, you know, I would make the keys, you know, I would tickle the ivory, in other words. And I couldn't understand, why would he give me that gift to tell me not to do it no more in the particular church setting? And it boggled my mind for quite some time. Matter of fact, I thought that I was hearing another voice that was contrary to the Holy Spirit. And I began to question it within myself. Even though I did not obey that, I continued on playing. And it wasn't until I got to a church that I thought that this was where I needed to be, because I thought that he meant stop playing for this particular church. So I spent a few years going around playing for different churches to try to find out, maybe he just meant not to play for that one, not to play, you know, totally, completely. So a pastor literally brought me in a room and fired me. And when that happened, when I was fired from it, the Father had already been speaking to me and telling me, stop doing it. And I said, wow. He really wants me to stop doing it, because I've never been fired from any church ever. And the pastor said, there's nothing you did wrong. I just don't think that you're the next person to take us in the way that that particular church was going, right? And when I began to find out what's going on at that particular church, he was right. I was not the right person to take them to whatever level that they were trying to ascertain.
You know, part of the ecclesiastical is the calling out.
Yes, sir.
Yeshua, which the world calls Jesus, said there had to be a calling out. You had to come out of that.
Yes, sir.
Because it was not good. Now, how did you happen to discover your Hebrew roots?
Oh, real easy. I had a dream that one of my friends was in the dream, and he had been telling me about, you know, the laws, the statutes, and the judgments. But of course, I said, well, that's for Israel. That's for these other people that are called Jews that are over there. That's not for us. We're Gentiles.
Right.
And I had a dream, and pretty much that dream, he was at one end, and everybody else was going the other direction.
Okay.
And he begged and pleaded with me not to go that way. And I woke up from that dream very startled. And I was like, man, it just stayed with me. You know how dreams could have a way of staying with you. Like something was important about that in the dream. And nevertheless, I said, Father, I prayed just a short prayer. And I said, if there's anything that this brother is telling me that's true, that I need to really look into and investigate a little bit deeper, you're going to have to show it to me, because I literally cannot see it. Okay. I was just what Paul said, blindness in part has happened to Israel. And I was unable to understand and connect any dots whatsoever at all of what he was trying to relate to me as being Israel and keeping the laws, statutes, and judgments. And when I prayed that prayer, I prayed it with a sincereness of heart, and I went to study the Bible. And as I do, my daily routine, my daily devotion, I opened up the Bible, and all of a sudden it opened up on Deuteronomy chapter 28.
Wow.
And I started going through the blessings,
Right.
And pretty much that's all I wanted to read was the blessings. And it was a prodding to say, don't stop at the blessings.
Right.
Read the curses now, focus on that.
Right.
And as I began to go through the curses, and I said, how long has this been in the Bible? All of a sudden I could identify, like, this is talking to somebody, and it looks like it's identifying a people that's on this earth today.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm not going to just look at this thing from United States people. It has to be global. I got to see this thing in every state and in every country. And that's what I began to do. I went through every last one of those curses, and I lined it up with every place around the world. And I saw that there was only one group of people on the bottom of the bottom in every category that I saw as those scriptures begin to unfold. And then, my heart fell on 68, verse 68, where it says, you'll go back into Egypt again on ships. And when I saw that, I pretty much began to precept on precept, line upon line, and my eyes were open, and instantly I was convicted. And for weeks I cried. I cried from another place because I had realized at this moment in time, and I always ask the question, who am I? Who am I really? I want to tell my children who I know something is wrong. I have to know who I am. And I fell on that verse in John chapter 5, verse 39, where it talks about search the scriptures, for you think you have eternal life.
Right.
And these are the things that testify of me. And as I begin to just spend time in the scriptures, and I begin to be convinced that I was actually a Hebrew, I was actually a descendant from these people.
Right.
I cried for weeks, Prince. And I cried from another place. I cried until I had no more tears.
Well, Pastor, the reason that I wanted the audience to hear your testimony is because it's millions of God's people laying out there, anguishing within themselves, trying to understand why they're having these emotions and feelings and dreams. And you're going to set free
Hallelujah.
millions of people out there when they hear this all over the world, to let them know that they're not mentally ill or crazy or rejecting God by hearing the voice of God in them. Because today I want to announce to everybody that hears this show, I want them to begin to hear the God in them, not the God that people is telling you outside of you. Because remember it said, I will write it in their hearts.
Yes.
And you won't have to teach your neighbor, know the Lord.
Yes.
For all shall know me.
Jeremiah.
And so you now are releasing that power for the people now can trust it. Now, you're preparing to go to Israel.
Yes, sir.
Why?
Well, when you begin to, read the book and you begin to learn and find out that these people are you, there's all of a sudden a longing for the land. It's a longing to go back home. It's a curiosity that turns into a longing and a desire to want to return. Because in Deuteronomy, which I love, Deuteronomy chapter 30, it says when these things come to mind, the blessings
wherever
and
you are.
Yes, wherever you are, that he will return and gather us. And
From the furthest part
yes,
of the earth.
yes. And it started becoming a little small, little fire. And then it began to just billow up into a great big, a raging fire within me, saying, "Man, I gotta go back home. I want to go back there and reconnect with the obvious."
Well, one of the things is that old gospel song that says it's like a Holy Ghost fire.
Yes, sir.
Shut up in my bones.
Yes.
You can't be still no more after
Hallelujah.
that.
Yes.
Well, as we bring this to an end, I want to put the offer out so that when you return back from Israel, we come and let the audience know the impact of walking in that land. And I want you to know that you are the beginning of the fulfillment of Dr. King's epiphany that he had in 1968 at Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, that God had allowed him to go to the mountaintop, look over, and see the promised land. He said, I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm witnessing that you are fulfilling what Dr. King said about the people of God, the African in America and the Africans scattered throughout the world, and all of the other people who's got God resonating in their soul. Because it's not about the skin color,
Right.
It's the content of your character.
Yes, sir.
We are building a world where all of the people on the planet will be able to resonate as family again.
Yes.
So I thank you so much,
Thank
Pastor.
you for having me.
And I look forward to interviewing you when you come back.
Hallelujah. We'll do it.
We're going to take a break, and after the break, we're going to have another guest that's in from Central Africa and South Africa to tell us about the reconnection of God's people and his experience in the Holy Land. Be right back. Things I wanted to do was begin to introduce the internationalness of God's people. We used to talk about we hadn't lost anything in Africa, and Malcolm X said you lost your mind in Africa to the African in America. And when he went to Ghana for the first time and he began to see the internationalization of African people, he felt a connection that he had never felt before. In the studio with me is Brother Pascal, who's born in Central Africa in the country of Zaire, that's now DRC, Democratic Republic. But as a young man, after he lost his biological father, he was planning on going to France to become an air pilot. But when he went into South Africa, he realized they were going through a transition and Nelson Mandela was getting out of jail. You pick up the story there and tell us what happened after that.
Yeah, so my dad just passed, and it's the first time, never happened before. So I'm in this great experience, and I'm at the age where as well I'm not too autonomous.
How old were you?
I was 18, going to
18
19.
years old.
Just finished my trick, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my brother was in South Africa, already there for a few years, newlywed.
Okay.
So I just tried to transit by there to go to France because I wanted to know how do I take it from there. And then when I go to South Africa, was actually another transformation taking place. Mandela was about to become the first elected black president. And that transformation came with a lot of frustration in the country. People were going out. Embassies were closed. They were working on the minimum hours because no one knew what will happen. There were so many media saying there will be a bloodshed. So I got stuck. After election now, there is another situation taking place in my home country. It's the fall of Mobutu and the coming of Kabila.
And Mobutu had been president for how long?
By then, he was already president for over 30 years.
Over 33
30
years.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
So I now have, I think, the fourth problem where we have no country. We have a geographic country, but it's neither Mobutu Zaire, neither Kabila RDC,
Right.
DRC. So we end up with no passport to travel with anywhere. And now I'm stuck in South Africa. Against my will, but only later understood actually it was the will of the Lord. Yeah.
I like that. Let's pick it up from that. The will of the Creator now had you in South Africa at a point of transition. How did you know it was the will of God?
Then I was wondering. I didn't really know much. But there was a time when Mandela came out of prison. And he made his first speech, I think it was in Cape Town, in English, coming from a French country. I could not understand. But because we watched the story of South Africa, Steve Biko trying to escape South Africa, and we watched that in school, I was fed a lot with the South Africa story,
Yes.
not knowing that I was in the destiny actually taking place.
Yes.
And I decided before I leave South Africa, I would like to hear that English that speech in English.
Ah.
Yes. So from there, I registered in an English school.
So not only did you come from a different country speaking a different language,
Yes.
you now came to a new country that you didn't know
At
anything
all.
about the language.
Nothing.
Didn't know no English at all.
Yeah.
Truly that was a transformation for you because you speak impeccable English now in a short time and you've done great things. Now, when you began to stay in South Africa, you became a businessman.
Yes.
Were you successful?
I was successful. I was mentored by a Chinese guy. I just happened to meet by somebody who called me to translate the transaction from French to English.
Okay.
And he adopted me because I spoke English, not better English, but for the two, it was enough to translate. And then after that negotiation, he said, can you come for further translation for me? So he gave me a number to call him over every Tuesday to find out the schedule. And yeah, that's how I improved my English until he made me a business partner.
Perfect.
Yes.
So now your fortunes are changing.
Yes.
Now tell me more about your growth spiritually as a man now in Africa between two worlds, Zaire, no Mobutu, DRC, a new man named Kabila,
Yeah.
and the country in turmoil.
In Shalom. Now I'm in South Africa by then. I'm at a very strategic age. I'm just entering in the world,
Okay.
coming from all what I'll call a boyish lifestyle to now a manhood.
Yeah.
And I start seeing things differently. I don't have a father to run to anymore, but I have also an institution that I don't understand, that I need to understand.
Right.
And so my growth was very rapidly to catch up with the reality that I was facing. But now, when I left Congo, I was born, which is very common in a country like DRC, Catholic family.
Yes.
You go to church, not by choice. You went to church because it was Sunday.
Yes.
And I must say I was very rebellious in that terms. I never understood then why the Lord kept me out of the church for too long. There was just something I never done. My friend went to church, and my peers, that was a description of good boy was to comply with the church, And me, I was on the other side. When I came to South Africa, I stayed with my brothers as well. They were Christian, And because there was a Congolese community that met every Sunday, so we constantly have people on Sunday after church coming have lunch. But that place as well, I didn't fit in because I was in the other lifestyle. I went out, came Saturdays, Sunday morning when they're having lunch, I'm tired, and I was already giving names,
Yes.
And that already made me resent Christian people.
Yes.
Because I could see what was behind camera.
Yes.
I didn't want to be. What is funny is that when I came to the Lord, which was in 2006, after a great walk and experience, I realized that I still really didn't like that environment.
Right.
And still not today.
Right.
I go to church. I'm a believer today, but there is just a description that I don't fit in.
Well, let me just say this. There's a difference between believing in God and believing God. See, you believed God because you knew something was wrong with the religious institution called the European Christian Church.
Yes.
Because it was those individuals that had destroyed Africa,
Yes.
that came in and colonized
Yes.
it and subjugated all of the people
Yes.
to this new religion that made them worship a white man as their savior and God as the embodiment of the white race.
Yes.
So you couldn't receive that comfortably. Tell me then, how did you separate the God in you, the truth that you were seeking, from the religion that you knew that was out there?
I would rather say it was God's gift to separate me.
Okay.
Because I was not aware, but
Yeah.
I knew in me there was no aspiration to what I saw around me. That there was just no life in me for that.
Okay.
And that has helped me when I reached the place where I heard, when I sensed the truth, I felt home. So it was because I stayed out for so long that when I heard the voice, the true voice,
You knew it.
I knew this was different.
Now, when you heard this true voice, you were in America on your way back to South Africa, But what did that voice tell you to do instead of going to South Africa?
To
It told you to go where? To Israel?
when I came to America, I came to visit. It was my birthday.
Yes.
I just came initially I wanted to come and study the word. I had that calling in my heart. I felt that in my heart.
You wanted
But
to
so
be-
I wanted to study the word because
Okay.
through the process of work, there were also experiences which we don't have time to elaborate on that made me start listening to a voice that was internal. You know,
Yes.
I had a court case in South Africa, a big court case against me. And I heard that voice telling me, don't look for a lawyer. I will stand for you.
I will be your lawyer.
I will be your lawyer. And that's how that spirit started cultivating itself in me. And I end up fighting this great institution that was suing me for tremendous amount of money.
Yes.
Winning the case and even being compensated.
Yes.
Now I knew something got to be different.
Yes.
But I look around, I saw nobody to even to relate to because they were still going to church, they still have the routine of Sunday, but I had a victory that have set me free in my personal life. And I knew I got to pursue this. Now, that's what I
How
came to
did
America.
you get to Israel?
I went to Israel, it was this year. I came to visit America for maybe a fifth year,
Yes.
which I usually do for my birthday. It just became a place where I encounter God differently. I hear His voice differently. And one of the reasons is probably because I never really polluted this city, this country, from my previous life. So it's like when I come here, I'm connecting differently.
Yes.
Now, I heard you're going to go to Israel this year. I was in New York City. You're going to go to Israel. I just heard that voice and I witnessed it. I said, thank you, Lord. I went back to South Africa. And then the Lord compelled me to minister to somebody who was going through a difficult time. But I was tired, jet lag. I said, Lord, can I see him after I rest? He said, go now. So I obeyed the voice again. I went to minister to the young man. And then the young man, after that, sent me money in my account. But the reference he put there was church. I was a little bit taken aback because I thought he gave me to put in the church. When I called him, he said, after you ministered to me, I felt so enlightened. And then when I was going home, I felt the Spirit telling me, give that money to Pascal.
And what did you do with that money?
So now I also pray and I present my case before the Lord, which I now do. I know I've come to know as well, I can talk to him.
Yes.
Then he now told me to use that money to go
To Israel.
to Israel. Yes.
Did you know anybody in Israel?
Nobody. Never been
The
there before.
reason I ask you this is because that was the same voice I heard 50 years ago that told me to get on a plane and go to Israel with nobody but me to find out. And I was being drawn there. So I'm saying to you that you also are part of the ingathering of God's people at this end of time, so that a new world is being ushered in, and it will be led by not just black men and white men, but all of the righteous on the planet will become family again.
Amen.
So I want you to know that this is the beginning of you reconnecting to your real family, the spiritual family
Yes.
that will never separate from you
Yes.
again. So I want to thank you, my beloved brother and friend, for coming and sharing with the audience what your experience of finding God for our people.
Yes.
I want to, before you leave, do a full interview of you that will let the world know that God has got a great purpose and destiny for you.
I'm on.
Thank you,
I'm
my
on.
brother.
Thank you so much
All
for
right.
having me.
Thank you. We're back again, and I'm very honored to have the Vice Chairman of Better World International and a elder statesman in the repaired kingdom of the original African Hebrew Israelite, Prince Amiel. Welcome.
Shalom, mighty prince. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I wanted to reintroduce you to the worldwide audience to let them know that you were one of those visionaries early in my life going to Israel that supported our going to Israel. But what was it that was inside of you that caused you to be able to hear me that day in Washington, D.C.?
Well, it was a very profound voice inside of me. But what I'd like to do is just quote a scripture.
Go right ahead.
That's totally relative to where I come from.
Okay.
Because we all talk about where we came from.
Right.
Brother Previous comes from Africa, came from Chicago, and in the Bible, there's a verse where it talks about, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea.
Yes.
Well, I thought that that was significant that we say that, because earlier you were talking about our people have been led to believe that the Bible isn't significant, or that somebody had manipulated it to the point that we were being deceived by it or whatever. But after spending years in church myself and coming to my relationship with you and the Israelites, I found out the Bible was extremely important. Matter of fact, it was paramount to what we termed that we wanted was freedom.
Right.
So I just wanted to digress to there, but I wanted to say that when I was young, I come from Bermuda. And for those who are scholars, they know that Bermuda is in the Atlantis region. So we literally come out of the water, the isles of the sea. And there's power in water, because water is life. And I felt in growing up that there's something about me that was different from everybody else, even as young as I can remember, because my mother married a serviceman from stateside who was in the Air Force. And she was pregnant with me, 7 months, when she met him. And but she was so beautiful, he couldn't help himself, so he decided to take her on with me inside of her, which he wasn't psychologically prepared for, because when I came out, he became totally negative about it. And he probably didn't know he was going to react that way himself. But as a result of that, I wound up growing in a masochistic home, in the sense that he was literally trying to abuse me. He literally abused me and was trying to kill me most of my life. So I felt that that aspect of him was what prepared me for my relationship with you and the African Hebrew Israelite nation of Jerusalem, because according to the scriptures, I was brought out of the isles of the sea. Now, part of my punishment, one of my punishments from him was that I had to watch the news every evening. So I didn't get to watch cartoons, I had to watch the news. So from 4 years old, Israel was in the news every day, all the way up till today. Every day. So Israel was etched in my mind, and my grandmother was how could you say, an elder in the Salvation Army.
Okay.
So trying to get me away from him, she took me to church, put me on stage to sing, where my musical career started. But all along, I had been feeling like, why was I being persecuted? Why was I being singled out by him? Because he began to have other children, but he would still do whatever he could to me. But then when I look back at it, I was born in a crucible to prepare me for another time. In the Schofield Reference Bible, it talks about the children being providentially sown.
Absolutely.
That there's been these words that have been spoken for years, but then the word had to become flesh.
Yes.
And so the word became flesh, and we are the flesh of 6,000 years of wording to bring this new heaven and new earth into existence. So coming from the isles of the sea, meeting you, and already having Israel in my mind, it was a no-brainer. Because when I met you, you said certain things to me, and I said, okay, I'm in.
Now, one of the things is that 8 years ago, you separated from what you had been doing for close to 35, 40 years, and I did too. But we didn't separate from God. We continued on the vision that God had given us, and we called our disconnection tikkunim, which means to repair what was broken. The community had gone into disrepair in terms of a misdirection of what we originally went to the Holy Land to do. Because Dr. King's epiphany of going to the mountaintop was to bring God's people back to Israel. Now, in the last 7 or 8 years, you and I have continued to do what we believe we originally went there. But in 2012, you and I went to Israel to do what?
Well, we went to Israel after the epiphany that we had together, which is very unusual for two people to have the same thought at the same time. But, we went to Israel because we understood that at some particular point, if you're playing football, at the end of the game, the whistle blows. Basketball, the buzzer blows. And if you go to a party, they flick the lights and say the end. And our question was, well, when does it end? Who calls it to an end? Because we had been resonating with the Mayan prediction that the world in 2012 there would be the end of an age and the beginning of a new one.
Right, December 2012.
December 2012. So corresponding with that, resonating with that, because all of these were indigenous people.
Right.
The Mayans, the Incas, and all the indigenous people, though Europeans have been trying to portray them as primitive and backwards and cannibals and all that kind of stuff. You know, you can't trust, the Indians say the white man speaks with forked tongues. So
Right.
he didn't change history, he didn't change times, and change laws. So you don't know what's what. You don't know that the Mayans are family, And so we're resonating with that because somebody had to.
So when we went and declared the end of an age, it's because Israel was chosen for signs and seasons and wonders in the earth.
That's right.
And so we declared it.
We declared it. We took it upon ourselves as the children of God, the angels of God, and the manifestation of Yah himself. We were given that mandate to call us to an end. So all of the things that we've been doing subsequent to that is helping people conceptualize that world is over. We call it into that world and the beginning of the heart-based civilization.
So here's what I'm going to suggest, that as we begin to go forward with Better World, that you and I will bring in and have an hour's discussion so that the listening audience will know the evolution of what we're talking about, the new heaven and the new earth.
Absolutely.
Hold on one second. What I'd like to close with is the reality of the contribution that you have made to the platform of the new world, and that is Torah.
Yes.
Give us briefly what you discovered Torah is and should be going forward.
Well, I'll put it like this. We've been through democracy, we've been through dictatorships, kingships, you name it, all of these different social systems. And all of these social systems, including the one that we're in now, so-called democracy, which is disguised hell, all of our people have been suffering from. Now, because Europeans have had the power to define, what we define as Torah has been relegated to, which is a Hebraic construct and concept, but it has been relegated to first five books of the Bible, but that's not true. We were sold that so that we wouldn't understand that God's social system existed all the time. And from the Genesis, what the Creator was trying to bring forth through his people was that social system, Torah. Now in Torah, juxtaposed to Torah, there's a word called nachash in Hebrew. In Hebrew, nachash means to be led into darkness.
Yes.
Now, nachash is synonymous with democracy.
Okay.
It's synonymous with dictatorship because all these social systems have led people into darkness. Now, what is Torah? Torah is the Creator's social system
Lead you to the light,
to lead the people to the light.
which is what Isaiah say, arise and shine, for thy light has
The
come.
light has come.
Darkness covers the earth and gross darkness the people.
Right.
But you now have the light of understanding.
Yes.
So now that we have that light with the new understanding of how the new heaven and the new earth will be led by men and women of the Creator now,
That's right.
we are standing on a new social system that will carry people to the joy and happiness that they will promise when they go to heaven.
Absolutely.
And we getting ready to create heaven on earth. So I want the audience to be prepared.
I just want to say this little things. One little thing about Torah is that the thing about Torah is not by the rod.
Right.
It's not by the staff. It's by the putting out of the hand, by encouragement.
Okay.
So this social system is not suppressive or depressive.
Right.
It encourages you all along the way. It points the way. And those who are the purveyors of the social system, whose job it is to define it to the rest of the world, our job is to encourage and bring people, because it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be the opposite.
So
of
that's
chaos.
what we're going to talk about in our next thorough interview. Is the encouraging you that's listening and watching that it is the beginning of happiness and joy
Absolutely.
on the planet.
Absolutely.
I thank you so much, Prince Amiel,
Thank you, Prince.
and I look forward
What a
to
perfect-
when you return back in a couple of weeks
Yes.
to follow up on your trip to the Holy Land as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Shalom.
We'll be right back after this break.
All right.
As we begin to close out this segment of Better World, I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing my firstborn. And I want him to read from the scriptures of what was said to the Pharaoh thousands of years ago. Read.
Reading from the book of Exodus, 4th chapter, 22nd verse. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn.
Now, as you saw on the credit, this is Prince Asiel Ben Israel Jr., my firstborn, born in the Holy Land after Dr. King had the epiphany that we as a people will get to the Holy Land. But also in the book of Revelations, I want you to understand the 12th chapter, and I'm personalizing it so that you can understand it. Read. 12th chapter,
12th chapter
first
of
verse.
Revelation, verse 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the third of part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them down to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, who was ready to be delivered, to devour her child as soon as it was born.
Well, his mother was pregnant with him when she joined me to go to the Holy Land. And for the last 25 years, that dragon with 10 heads was trying to destroy the firstborn in Israel. It was the 7th child born in the community. And as we know, the number 7 is deliverance. And the number 7 is significant because it was on the 7th day that the Creator rested from his work. And I'm saying that Ben Asiel, Prince Asiel Jr., is now prepared because he's been through the trials and tribulations. He fought off Pharaoh's attempt to destroy him. He fought off Herod's attempt to kill him. He has risen from the dead after the crucifixion, and he has been able now to be an example for the world to see the new man and the new Redeemer for the planet that will join the other sons and daughters of his generation that will begin to build a new and a better world, so that they will see that the God of Israel, the God of creation, the Holy One, has brought back his people to the Holy Land. We celebrated 50 years of being outside of America and in the Holy Land. We had the great blessing to have one of the priests of Israel write a book saying the whole house of Israel is now returning. So returning from all over the world are men and women of good will coming to rebuild and begin the world that will create heaven on earth. And so I wanted the audience to know that I'm turning over the reins of our generation to the next generation, and we will be the elders to give the kind of advice to connect our experience with their strength to continue on. So let it be known that we are endorsing the next generation, and we will be the platform that they can stand on. For God has approved our works and caused us to survive long enough so that the world will see that he bagged us, supported us, and strengthened us. And so I wanted you to hear from Prince Asiel Ben Israel Jr. and his team that will be coming on his program to share with the world the new direction. So Prince, what would you like to say to the audience to let them know what your vision is for your generation and beyond?
Well, first all praises to the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of the universe, who created this world with the idea of eternal peace, harmony, and the rhythm of love. I greet you in peace. I'm more than grateful, Father, to be able to finally live up or look up to your name and the great works that you and the mighty pioneers and the men who helped construct the kingdom idea to help create an environment where we could escape slavery, to put together a prophetic movement in course and in line with the prophecies and in line and in tune, empowered by God himself to make such an exodus. I'm proud and I'm happy that I've lived long enough to understand the work that you all have done, my fathers, my uncles, and brothers who have put the work in and sacrificed their lives, their families, and loved ones on this journey. It made me, growing up in Israel, born and raised and growing up in Israel, proud to be an African Israelite. It took away, growing up, I did not have the fear of Europeans. In fact, it was the opposite around. Europeans were following behind us to learn how to be free. Grew up free from religion, free from an imprisoned mind, no shackles on or no limit to what we could be. The world was ours and everything in it, as it was told to Adam in the beginning. So in this season, what I have been talking about in Facebook and other social medias and in person was that this is the harvest of the wheat and the tare that was spoken about in Matthew 24 and 13. 13th chapter, 24 verse. What does that mean in this season is that we all grew together and we all was at one level of consciousness. And now the Creator has raised the level of consciousness to another realm where we are becoming gods again. We're getting that power and that access back directly to the Creator that we had at the beginning, that Yeshua had, who they call Jesus Christ. Where now that line of access has been opened thanks to the work that you've done and some of the other great African black leaders who helped free the slave and the slave mind. But what made it so special is in Israel is that when we first went there, our parents took us there, we thought that the fight was over and that we didn't have to fight anymore, not recognizing that the enemy had a plan as well as we had a plan. So we focused only on our plan, and so we didn't calculate that the other side of the board had a strategy. So we faced some challenges in that. And so now it's time for us to wake up, recognize, and claim our inheritance. Time to fulfill our destiny. It's time to sober our minds up and take the responsibility. The foundation is laid. Now it's time to build up on a solid foundation.
That's, for me, not only makes all of us happy, your fathers, your mothers, your uncles, your brothers, and your family, that we have produced a sacrifice to the Creator, and we come with the gift of our children and grandchildren to present to Him, that we will be servants to Him and His vision for us and not lean to our own understanding. So I want to thank you for trusting us and coming from the dead back to life, proving that we know how to resurrect ourselves and give life again. So from this moment on, we will be breathing the breath of life in you and your generation. All we say is keep your hand in our hand as we journey on to greatness. So I want to thank you, Prince, for accepting the responsibility to carry the mantle and free the captives, the widows and the orphans, and make the 82nd Psalms become real. And I'm saying to you, know ye not that ye are God and goddesses to set the people free in truth. Thank you so much.
Tada.
Until next week. we'll be back. And he will be back talking about the vision in West Africa, the vision in West Eden. No longer will we call it Africa, but we're returning the continent back to the paradise that it was created. Thank you.